Today is September 1st. Happy September. I had a good August. It was a hot month. What did we do in August? I went to my first post-COVID. Who am I kidding? I went to my first in a long time concert. Japanese breakfast and Mannequin Pussy, and it was great. It was really fun. Concert in a mask is a weird thing, but it was kind of nice. I kind of liked the anonymity it gave me. What else did I do in August? Lots of good hangouts with friends. Oh, we went on the best camping trip. Justin and I went to the Adirondacks. We did some really good hiking. We did this great hike on Saturday, the weekend that we went camping, that took most of the day. It was so nice. Should I throw up some hike porn here? Oh, the best. Really nothing makes me happier in the whole world. I think that's true. That's true. Nothing's better than that. And while you're doing it, when you get to the top, you cannot believe how good it looks. And you know already, the second you start hiking down, it's gone. You won't be able to conjure it in your mind. You'll look at pictures, but it's not the same. And I love hiking because when you set out on a really long hike that you know is supposed to take you all day, which is my favorite thing, you know that you don't have to make a single decision the rest of the day. You just have to put one foot in front of the other for the next 10 hours, and the payoff's gonna be huge. I love that so much. Works better than my anxiety medicine, I'll be honest. That was August. We also survived a hurricane. A pretty tame one, especially here in Connecticut. Okay, books. I read 6 books this month, which is a record low. I usually read like twice that, but honestly, who cares? If there's one thing I do not have time to care about, it is how many books I am reading in a month. I started the month off with Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch by Rivka Galshan, and I enjoyed it. Dry and funny, the voice is so good. I described this to someone as Hamnet with a sense of humor. It's got that feminist retelling of an actual historical event from a woman's perspective, but it's got a real absurdist, hilarious sense of humor. It is experimental in form, epistolary. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I think people are divided about this book, but I liked it. It's weird. I like weird. The main character, the woman who is accused of being a witch, this is based on a real event. She is Kepler, the famous mathematician's mother. She is accused of being a witch. She's got a real don't give a fuck attitude about it. She's like, people don't like me because I get in people's business and I tell them how to live their lives. She rubs people the wrong way, and she does not have time for other people's feelings or opinions about how a woman should behave. I'm here for that. Okay, next I read Light Years by James Salter. I have a lot of feelings about this book. Where to even begin? This book is about a marriage. We have 2 main characters. The perspective ping-pongs between the 2 of them over the course of a long marriage, many decades. And nothing happens, which is right up my alley. You know I love a book where nothing happens. We have these 2 people exploring what it means to be married for a very long time. Really, the question on their minds, on the reader's mind, throughout the entire book is, what is happiness? What is pleasure? How do we seek pleasure? And both of our characters are just trying to seek pleasure and make life worth living and fulfilling. Often they're finding it in affairs with other people outside of their marriage. The sex scenes in this book are really hot. I will say that this is a book written by a man, 70s, I think? 1975. The male gaze is strong on this one. The descriptions of women's bodies is very male gazy. You have to go into this knowing this is not the feminist manifesto you seek, but when you accept that you are going to be reading sex scenes that are full of the male gaze, and you can just allow that to be acceptable, the sex scenes are hot. Not in a super explicit way. There's a scene in which our wife is getting it on, doggy style, on the floor with her lover. It describes the way the carpet is eating in her palms. So it doesn't use it would never use the phrase doggy style. Did the phrase doggy style exist in 1975? Let me know. You see the rug eating into her palms and knees, and whew, It's good. Also in that scene, her lover reads to her from a French cookbook while they climax. I don't have complaints about that. So we have these two characters. This book has real Mad Men vibes. If you're a fan of Mad Men and good sentences, you'll like this book. Our main character husband works in the city and they live in this like beautiful remote Hudson location. If you watched the most recent season of Master of None, which is a whole nother conversation, but the house they live in Hudson in that show is exactly what I picture when I read this. I love a Hudson country house. Anyway, so this story ping pongs between the city and Hudson. There's also like a real love and fascination with Europe, London and Paris throughout, which to some people might be cringe. It's like, wow, that's a cliche, but because I am that cliche and I fucking love that shit, that really spoke to me. So our man and woman are just trying to figure out how to seek pleasure in their lives, how to extract pleasure from existence. Not to spoil it for you, but I think the answer for both of them comes down to their children. This book loves kids, just wants to celebrate children and the magic within them, and I love that. Every sentence about children within this book just was like heartbreaking. Every sentence in this book is fantastic. I should have led with that. The reason to read this book is to eat these sentences. This book has the most beautiful sentences I've ever read in any book ever, I think. I'm sorry. I read it and I was like, the male gaze part is cringy. Also, I had a lot of discomfort around the Judaism in this book. Our characters are Jewish and say lots of shit that feels very anti-Semitic to me. And James Salter, I read his original name was like James Horowitz or, you know, something very Jewish. And he changed it to James Salter after experiencing a lot of anti-Semitism in the Navy or Army, one of the armed forces. And I think there's some serious internalized anti-Semitism with this man, and that comes across really hard in this book in ways that to me I was like, whoa. It was 1970 and you could print shit that it was insane. So yes, there's problematic parts about this book, and this is a perfect piece of fiction. I love this so much. Honestly, the most beautiful sentences. At one point later in life, the woman describes their marriage as being in the grocery store of life. Phenomenal. I don't have enough good things to say about this book. And I liked that there were parts about this book that I didn't like and made me feel uncomfortable, and at the end of the day, I loved it. I like being pushed that way in a reading experience. Yeah, this was great. Good recommendation. Next, I read Sympathy by Olivia Sujic. I'm not sure. This was a big boy, 400 pager. This is very much an internet novel. We have a main character who is trying to discover where she comes from. Her father has disappeared. Her mother raised her alone in England. Her mother and father did live in Tokyo together. They adopted her. She was born from her biological parents in New York. She goes back to New York to live with her adopted grandmother to try to figure out where she comes from and what she can discern about who she is, and then becomes obsessed with a woman who she follows on the internet, an older woman who is a creative writing professor at Columbia, I think. This book is about being obsessed with a woman you meet on the internet, and I loved it. It was a little long. I was recommending this to CJ. I think this is a hardcore CJ Albert's book. I told her it was like if The Shame was written by Donna Tartt. It has that Donna Tartt thing where a lot is happening, covers a lot of ground, and it just keeps going. How much longer can this book be? And there's a whole nother loop-de-loop around the roller coaster of this book. This was definitely a summary read for me. Not the most conceptual book I've ever read, but it was a romp and it was really fun. I recommend this one too. By the way, I had a great reading month and I liked all of these books. So at the end of every single one, I'm gonna say, yeah, and it was great and I liked it and you should read it. So just buckle up, prepare for that. Okay, next I read Friends and Dark Shapes by Kavita Bedford. I did do a reading vlog about this, so you should check that out. I read this while I survived my hurricane and I really liked it. This was about a woman whose father's recently died, and it is the first year of her processing that grief as she lives in Sydney, Australia with roommates. And this book explores a lot about class issues, gentrification, class consciousness. Again, not a ton of plot in this one, not a lot happens. There's a lot of flashbacks to coming of age and sex and puberty. Obviously a lot about grief in this one. I did think that this book read very debut-y. I mentioned in that vlog, but it was right up my alley. The friends who recommended this to me on the internet were absolutely right that this is a me book. This is definitely a thinky woman, hardcore. I'm really excited to read any and everything else Kavita Bedford publishes. And I'm on a real Australian lit kick now. I think that, you know, because of Blueberries, Australian publications got on my radar, and now I'm getting great recs for great Australian lit, and I am loving it. So keep the Australian lit recs coming. It's also making me really want to go to Australia, which I cannot afford, but before I thought going to Australia would be cool. I don't know that I could survive that plane ride being that long. Now I'm invested. I feel like I could get just enough Ambien to make it work. Should I go to Australia? Who wants to sponsor a literary sojourn pilgrimage to Sydney for me? Let me know. Next, I read Vanishing Twins, recommended by CJ Alberts. And I loved this one. A memoir. A woman who grew up as a ballerina. I love that. She marries young. This book is 10 years of marriage, where she explores what it means to be married, what it means to be in a monogamous relationship, and she explores polyamory, sort of comes out as bisexual. I really appreciated the thoughtfulness around the institution of marriage in this book. I think she's very honest and real about the temptations that exist when you're married and the temptation to maximize the pleasure and love that you give and receive, and how marriage can sometimes feel like a limitation on the love you can give and receive. An acknowledgement that to answer that temptation, to explore that temptation, to see where it leads you is inherently messy. There is no roadmap. There's no part where she says like, this is how you should open your marriage, and these are the rules. If every couple in the world opens their marriage following these rules, nothing will happen. She is not that naive. She's very about exploring and seeing if it works. I also love how honest she is about when you are the partner who is having a relationship outside your marriage. It feels so good. You have something called new partner energy that just inherently feels different than old partner energy. It's not better or worse. It's different, and the love you have or the attraction or the lust you have for your husband or long-term partner and your lover or new partner are different and therefore not in competition with each other. I believe her when she says that her love and attraction to this woman doesn't impact her love and attraction for her husband. I believe that, I feel that with her. Also completely believe and sympathize with the feelings of jealousy, fear, insecurity she has when her husband takes a lover. Those both seem to make sense to me. And I love that she allows those both to exist without saying this is inherently a contradiction. Another thing I liked about this book is the twins of the title in some ways refer to her and her husband. Applying a sibling metaphor or relationship onto your significant other can feel icky or weird, but I also sort of relate to that. Sometimes I wonder in my relationship if our similarities and similar tastes, the fact that we like the same things and hate the same people and listen to the same music and eat the same food and enjoy the same things, is a product sort of nature versus nurture, the way we talk about siblings. I have been with my partner now for a decade. We love a lot of the same things, but we didn't love them when we got together. We have grown and changed. And have we grown and changed in tandem because we are together, or because we're so perfectly suited and matched? When you think about siblings who have the same likes and dislikes and hand gestures, and are those similarities the product of their genetics? And I think the metaphor for genetics is sort of compatibility when it comes to a partner. Are those things between siblings that genetic, foretold in genetics, or are they because they are raised in the same family? And being with a partner for this long, it almost feels like we are growing up together. We have been in many ways raised in the same family. It's just that family is is this one here in this house that we make together. So that's what this book made me think about. It was fast. It looks big, but it's not. There's very little writing on most pages. This book will take you an hour. I tried to savor it because I really wanted to hold on to it. I think that our author, Leah Diedrich, she's really into connections and finding connections and creating connections, and sometimes I felt like I was with her on that and sometimes they felt like a stretch. She's looking for signs that things from her youth are reappearing, magic and meaning in everything. In the letter E, I don't think the writing was outrageous. The writing in here is not the same as the writing in here, but this was really enjoyable. I love that Leah Diedrich just says it is human to want to love and have love, joy, and pleasure in human connection. And to desire human connection from as many people as possible is natural and human. To want a human connection from your spouse and from women you admire and meet and from your colleagues who you admire, to want to love is okay. Yeah. Okay. And lastly, I read on freedom. This also took me a while. I really enjoyed it. This book is about freedom. Written in 4 sections: art, sex, drugs, and climate change. In each of these, it takes these 2 arguments where freedom from and freedom to butt up against each other and tries to find a middle third way. I talked about the art section in my hurricane vlog, so I won't go back over that. The sex section was my absolute favorite. This section was in some ways a reaction to the Me Too movement. I'm pausing because I realized my husband started reading it, and there are his notes. Who said you could write in my book? The second section on sex, the dichotomy at play here is about freedom. The freedom to is about sexual freedom, sexual empowerment, sex positivity, the freedom for women to be sexual beings. And then the freedom from is the freedom from trauma and rape and sex violence, and freedom from feeling unsafe when it comes to sex. Nelson makes this argument that it's not enough to just be able to say no, that the current climate around sex is a climate of saying no, being able to say no and have that no be heard. And she's saying, but you also need to be able to say yes, or say this is what I want, and therefore you need to know what you want. We know that in the current climate, when a woman accuses somebody of sexual violence, the first thing that is done is to besmirch that woman, to say she's a sexual being. She drank, she flirted, she wore a short skirt, she kissed him. This cannot be sexual violence. Maggie is saying that's ridiculous, because it is. We need to find a place where we can say, you can both have freedom from violence and freedom to get it on and say what you want. And even if what you want is to be dominated or to be bottomed or to have types of sex that other people might deem as examples of patriarchal domination or misogyny, that's not their business. I found that to be a nuanced take on the Me Too movement, a nuanced take on modern feminism. There is reference to Aziz Ansari's scandal, so read it just for that. The next section is the drug section, which to me just was the least compelling. I enjoyed that the least. The contradiction at play here was the freedom to do drugs, the freedom that drugs offer. I want to get high to feel free. Then the freedom from addiction, the way that addiction can be in itself a trap, a limit on freedom. And then the 4th section was about climate change. And this one, I was like, whoa, where are we going with this, Maggie? Make me feel better. It didn't really, I'll be honest, but what could? And here this freedom is about like climate change deniers or climate change resistors say that things that we want to put in place to slow down climate change are impingements on freedom. You are impinging on my freedom to use plastic and travel on an airplane as much as possible, ride alone in my car all the time. Of course, the other side of this coin is freedom to live on a planet that exists in a habitable way. There's also a lot of discussion in this chapter about children and the role that having a child is often in juxtaposition to being a climate activist. Or actually, no. What I found a little frustrating about this conversation is, so oftentimes when I listen to interviews or read books by people who are climate activists or climate scientists, like Wallace Wells, for example, who wrote The Uninhabitable Earth, and he talked all about how Earth is warming. We have done a lot of harm. And then they say, well, do you have hope? He says, I have to because I have a child, and the best hope we can have is to have children and bring children into this world to carry that hope forward. And that is a slippery argument to me that I don't understand. And I think Maggie falls into that a little bit. And she talks a lot about her children. She talks a lot about how it is hard to have a child and be a realist about climate change. She doesn't actually acknowledge that not having children can in itself be climate activism. That's what felt like a hole to me. Reproductive freedom. Freedom to make choices about when we reproduce and don't was not discussed in this book. Okay, that was my reading month. 6 books. I liked every single one of them. No duds this month. I think 4 to 5 stars every single one of them. It was a great reading month. I'm very grateful. 6 great books. And now I'm reading the next book that my book club chose, which is called Kim Ji-young, born 1982, translated from Korean. So far, so good. And every month, I like to give a little extra recommendations. First of all, television. We've been watching, mostly we're just biding our time, waiting until Succession comes back out in October, season 3. While we do that, we watch 2 shows, or we're in the middle of one of them still this month, which was The Chair on Netflix and Reservation Dogs on Hulu. Reservation Dogs is beautiful and hilarious and weird and really funny and stars teenagers that I love. I love them. I want to hang out with all of them. Highly recommend the show. The Chair, also very funny. I feel like The Chair was made by an algorithm that knows what I want and gave it to me. And yes, I did read the Brandon Taylor essay where he snarks all over the show and he calls it mediocre, and that's fine. He's not totally wrong. I have no complaints with Brandon Taylor. But this show stars Jay Duplass, who is one of my all-time celebrity crushes. I love Transparent, and he's in that, and I fell in love with him in that show, and I just love him so much. And in this show, he plays a defeated, pot-smoking, angry white male professor, which is my husband. So that was weird. And our main character, Sandra Oh, love her, curly bangs, love that. And we have this very snarky older drunk woman who's definitely all about her sexuality, afraid of nobody, doesn't give a fuck, and we have a hilarious, precocious child. It's everything I need in a show. So I really enjoyed it. Laughed out loud on several occasions. My second recommendation is a recipe for peach pie called Peaches and Cream Pie. If you've been following along for a while, you will know that I like to bake. I really like to have people over to my house for dinner, friends around the dining room table, and I like to bake and cook. This month, I made maybe the easiest dessert I've ever made. And honestly, I was a little offended by how much people liked it. People liked it maybe the most positive reception anything I've ever baked was. And it was so easy. It's like one of those graham cracker push down crusts. And you don't even bake the filling. You just like mix it up and put it in. The secret obviously is high quality peaches, so I need to tell you now before those are gone. So if you have the last of your high quality peaches, I think you should make this recipe. It's a New York Times cooking recipe linked downstairs. If you don't have access to that, send me a DM and I'll send you a screenshot. I want you to feel as good as I did. Last, N+1 this month published a snarky ass article about how book criticism was dead. And then Gawker responded with a snarky ass response article. And I loved it. I don't really have a dog in this fight. I'm not sure that either of these arguments are incredibly nuanced, but really enjoyed the drama and the snark of these 2 men going at each other. So I linked those downstairs too. Read those, tell me your take. Is book criticism dead? Okay, that was August. And now it's September. Days are gonna get real dark in the afternoon, so enjoy these last few evenings. Go for a bike ride tonight. You have to, I told you to. You can't disappoint me. Please comment below and tell me your favorite book that you read in the month of August, and tell me if you're gonna read any of these books or if you have already read any of these books, and give me a rec for another Australian author. All right, I love you nerds. Thanks for tuning in. See you soon.